Namaskar, Nilesh here in another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. Today we are going to discuss the astronomy evidence on the 16th day of the Mahabharata war when Bhima killed Dusshasan. Again, this is another episode in Shraddha and Pradnya series, part 23, Dusshasan Vadha and astronomy evidence. It occurred on the 16th day of the Mahabharata war and therefore on 31st of October 5561 BCE. So tomorrow, and in India already 31st October 2022. So that's 7583rd anniversary of Dusshasan Vadha. Okay, all right. Quickly, you know the context. Dusshasan had tried to disrobe Draupadi at the suggestion order of Karna and Duryodhan at the time of a Dyuta. Of course, that did not work. You can read the details in the Mahabharata text. Fast forward 14 plus years now to the 16th day of the Mahabharata war. Bhima killed Dusshasan as he had taken a pratidnya of killing all Kaurava brothers, by the way. And with specific to Dusshasan, he had made a pratidnya that he will drink his blood, okay, because of his heinous act at the Hastinapur court, okay, at the time of the Dyuta game. Those details also you can read in the Mahabharata text. Quickly, let's move on to the astronomy evidence. And there is a lot of it. So the first one is 7 planets moving away from the sun happening on the 16th day of the war. Now, you may remember we already looked at Jayadratha Vadha and astronomy evidence for the 14th day of the war. That day, 7 planets are described attacking the moon. All right. And 7 or 8 days before the war, before the Mahabharata war, so before the war began, that is on 16th of October 5561 BCE, there is a description of 7 planets together in the sky. I mean, 7 planets could be seen in principle, or they were present, factually present in the sky at the same time. 7 to 8 days before the Mahabharata war, when moon was in Magha Nakshatra. And that can be also shown. In fact, that can be also shown for 5561 BC. As we saw, Jayadratha Vadha, 14th day, 7 planets attacking the moon can be shown for the 29th of October 5561 BCE. And here on the 31st of October, which is what, 16th day of the Mahabharata war, 5561 BC, Nishcharanto Vyadrushanta Suryat Sapta Mahagraha, 7 planets were seen going away from the sun. That can be demonstrated, validated, corroborated here. So if you want to quickly count those, I am showing 31st of October here, showing the position of the sun just at the horizon, ready to set, but showing it there kind of to say, hey, those 7 planets were going away from the sun. So here is sun. Now let's look at these planets. Jupiter, number 1 here. Mercury, number 2. Uranus, number 3. Venus, number 4. Mars, number 5. Neptune, number 6. And Pluto, number 7. Now, what is interesting? Okay, now let's not even talk about the planets which are not in the picture. So the only planet kind of remaining is the Saturn, which is, to the, let's say, to the west of the sun. So that's why it has gone under the horizon already. And of course, unless it is in retrograde, it is moving towards the sun. And it may be worth checking whether Saturn was retrograde at that point or not. We would want it to be retrograde if we want to count the Saturn. That way we can say it is going away from the sun. But that's not even required. Let's look at, and it's not visible in the sky. I mean, we are not looking at just 7 planets. I mean, they are going to be there somewhere in the orbit, okay, somewhere along the ecliptic. We are referring to, for the validation, for a empirical validation, we need all of these planets to be present in the sky at one point, okay? All right, so from the sun, if you go in the eastern direction, okay, so Jupiter, number 1, Mercury, number 2, Uranus, number 3, Venus, number 4, Mars, number 5, Neptune, number 6, and Pluto, number 7. Pluto is right here. In fact, with the exception of Pluto, all the planets, and I have tested it, validated it, you can do the same. And I want you to do the same. All these 7 planets, none of them were in retrograde, except Pluto. I'll come to Pluto in a second. They were all going in the eastern direction and thus away from the sun. So that statement is extremely valid for October 31st. Now, Pluto, if you look at Pluto, and I have tested it, the Pluto was in retrograde. Now, what is interesting about Pluto, in fact, practically true for Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but we will refer to it only about Pluto because that's what is relevant. The orbital period of Pluto is so huge that even when they go in retrograde, and that's why I said it's true for Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, practically they don't move. Okay, so as far as the visual observation is concerned, they are not going in a backward direction. Okay, so the observation is extremely beautifully, okay, validated, corroborated with very high degree of testability. That's our astronomy evidence number 1, we can say, for 16th day of the Mahabharata war in the context of Dusshasan Vadha. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is a series of actually pieces of evidence, but the bigger point they are saying is a full moon day and full moon like moon, because these are the descriptions, the full moon descriptions we get from, we have in the Mahabharata text from 12th day of the Mahabharata war all the way to the 18th day of the Mahabharata war, and actually for a day and two after the 18th day of the Mahabharata war. And depending on which manuscripts you are looking at, you will actually find full moon descriptions in the Mahabharata text, beginning with the 10th day of the Mahabharata war. So now think of it. So from the 10th day of the Mahabharata war to 18th, and I said 2 additional days. So take that as a 20th day. So 15 right in the middle, which was the full moon day, and plus minus 5 days, you get a full moon descriptions. Now, some Mahabharata researchers who neither understand even a simple visual astronomy, definitely don't understand Mahabharata astronomy, definitely lack scientific acumen, which is a Vijnana Buddhi, also lack logical reasoning skills, and very poor on the background knowledge. What do? Now, the reason they do it is because of all of this, but the real reason is because in a very dogmatic fashion, they have attached themselves to a specific year of the Mahabharata war. And you know what? It has become a part of their personality. Okay. Sir Karl Popper says, the good tests, empirical tests, scientific tests, objective testing, good tests kill bad theories. We survive to guess again. But for these few individuals, actually, there are many, they are so attached to a claim that they have borrowed from someone. And guess what? They borrowed in a dogmatic fashion. They borrowed for their personal glory. And what a I feel for them. What a sad choice they made. And some of them have admitted this with me in during one-on-one conversation. But of course, because of some attachment, they cannot give it up, or they think they don't understand the principle of vijnana. So that's why I'm saying they lack vijnana buddhi. They think now to admit that that date is a disaster is like a personal insult to them. The truth is far from such foolish understanding. Okay, we make mistake all the time. Okay, the professor of Richard Feynman, again a great professor himself, he used to say our problem in the sense, our challenge is to make the mistakes as fast as we can, which he was saying we would like to make mistakes as fast as we can. We don't end up making mistakes as fast as we can, because every time we make a mistake and we recognize it's a mistake, in a way the recognition of a truth is embedded in that mistake, embedded in that error. Anyways, most of these folks are not in the mood to understand this, and it is a good thing because they provide enough ammunition for us as a reference material to understand about a Mahabharata. Okay, so error, as I said, recognition of an error has truth embedded in it. We may not have found it. Similarly, many false claims, many erroneous claims are actually a good thing. Okay, because in that context, one person has some one theory. In fact, none of these people have any theory to state. Okay, that's what I keep on asking, and they feel offended and they will get very personal, start ad hominem attacks on me and so on. So one of that particular attack, not so much on me, but of course they say, oh, this guy doesn't understand, is like when the full moon descriptions appear in the Mahabharata text, beginning from the 10th day of the war and go all the way to the 20th day. Now, there is no war on the 20th day, 18th day, but there are descriptions like a Sautik Parva and then Stri Parva going into the 19th and the 20th day from the first day of the Mahabharata war. And we get these full moon descriptions right from the 10th day of the Mahabharata war all the way to last day plus 2 days. And in order, because they cannot show this, show the validation for these descriptions for their claimed year or their claimed specific days, they try to create this confusion and delusion among the Indian masses, among the Mahabharata enthusiasts, like as if I'm claiming there is a full moon day every day. How stupid that can be. But that's the kind of idiocy and juvenile level these Mahabharata researchers are projecting themselves. Why? Well, I'll leave it to you to guess. The reality is, anyone, and we see we have lost this art of watching the night sky. And those people who have access to clean skies, okay, somewhat away from the light pollution, but even the light pollution will do as at least for watching the moon. I would encourage all of you, and not because I'm asking. I mean, if you are curious enough, you ought to do it. You find a way. Don't give an excuse, okay? Keep on watching the night sky, the evening sky through the night and so on. And you don't have to watch for the whole time. Notice the changes in the phases and positions of the moon. And when you see the moon, try to guess the tithi or try, which is like, is it a Pratipada, is it Dvitiya, is it Tritiya, Chaturthi, Panchami, Shashti, Saptami, Ashtami, Navami, Dashmi, Ekadashi, Dwadashi, Treyodashi, Chaturdashi, Purnima. And in the Vadya Paksha, if you just count the same thing, Pratipada, Dvitiya, all the way to Chaturdashi, Krishna Chaturdashi or Vadya Chaturdashi, and then Amavasya. Those are the 30 tithis. And try to guess just from looking at the phase, can you guess the tithi right? And then you can do this comparison in the Druk Panchang, for example, or Date Panchang. We have update on Twitter every day with the Mahabharat Samvat 7583. You can check with that, see if it matches. The reason I'm asking you to do this is what you will notice is once the moon gets above like a Navami, so Dashmi, Ekadashi, Dwadashi, Trayodashi, Chaturdashi, and Purnima of the Shukla Paksha, and after Purnima, Pratipada, Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturthi, Panchami, etc. of the Vadya Paksha, just looking at it, you will say, oh, that looks like a full moon day today, Purnima today, or close to Purnima. That is because the illumination is pretty high, above 70% for this Purnima day plus minus 5 days, okay? For practical purposes, it looks like a full moon or close to a full moon or like a full moon, okay? That is not to be confused with having a Purnima day every day. The way some of these very dishonest Mahabharata researchers are doing to fool people, confuse people, okay? So this is very relevant. Now, this is the 16th day of the Mahabharata war, which is what? Just a day after the full moon day. 15th day was the full moon day, okay? Now, look at the descriptions. These descriptions appear in many different contexts, okay? So that's that you can read through actual Karna Parva. But how rich are these descriptions in terms of pure numbers, but very specific descriptions. So we have here the simulation from Astronomy software for the 16th day of the Mahabharata war, October 31st. Okay, see, this position is the position of the Purnima. So moon has moved about a day, you can say, from the Purnima position, okay, which is like Purnima. In fact, let's look at the, we have it here. Let's look at the illumination, okay? How bright is the moon? 98.9%. I'm telling you, and take this as a experiment on your part, especially people who are not living in big cities. Look at the moon through multiple cycles, like 5, 6 cycles with clear skies. Okay, cycles meaning through the whole month, and try to predict and see how bright it looks. Okay, so 98.9%. Okay, 100% is mathematically and theoretically full moon. 98.9% is a full moon. In fact, that's the kind of illumination you will see vary during the day of Purnima itself. Okay, so this is a full moon. And guess what? The 16th day, in fact, is filled with full moon descriptions. Purna Chandrarka Padamanam, the first verse there. Or if you go Purna Chandra Bhavaktrani, or Purna Chandra Nibhair Mahim, or Purna Chandra Nibhanicha. And guess what? You will not see these descriptions during the first 8 days of the Mahabharata war, because it begins with Amavasya and up to Saptami or Ashtami, right? You are not going to see these descriptions. You don't see them the first day, first 8, 9 days of the Mahabharata war. And there are additional descriptions. The first day of the Mahabharata war, as soon as the sunset occurred, it says war stopped. The darkness was so severe that we could not see each other. That's what Sanjay says. Now, when does that happen? It happens on the day of Amavasya, or it happens on the day very close to Amavasya. That's how precise and accurate Mahabharata descriptions are for the phases and positions of the moon. All right, so this is another second set of evidence. Full moon like moon, therefore I'm using the term deliberately because of the utter stupidity created by these Mahabharata researchers. Full moon like moon, here it is not saying full moon like moon, it's saying Purna Chandra Arka Padamanam, Purna Chandra Bhavaktrani, Purna Chandra Nibhair Mahim. Why? Because it's like a full moon. It is a full moon. Okay, Purna Chandra Nibhanicha. And you see this, but something more fascinating, okay, is waiting. By the way, that's the 16th day of the Mahabharata war. I mean, not sorry, 16th day, 16th Tithi, which is what? One day after Purnima. Purnima, think of this as a 15th, one day after Purnima. That's exactly what this is. And full moon is near Nakshatra Punarvasu. Now, the thing gets longer. Otherwise, I could even tell you how the research process goes. For example, and I'll tell you when it actually comes. Okay, so let me go further. So this is second set of evidence for the 16th day astronomy evidence. Let's go to the third one. What is the significance of Vishakha? On the 16th day, there is one reference that comes. Okay, Shirascha Tat Purna Shashi Prabhananam. Again, Purna Shashi, full moon. This is the fifth reference, guys. Okay. Then Sarosha Tamra, Yatanetra Munnasama, etc. But the important thing is Kshito Bibabhraja Patatsa Kundala. Like one king, I forgot, I think it's a Nila, but don't count me on that. I could be saying the wrong name. He's been killed, and his face, or if he's not killed while he's fighting, his face, and he's wearing the kundala. Okay, so he's two kundala. His face is between the two kundala. And how did his face look like? His face looked like, okay, the full moon between the Vishakha. Vishakha yor madhyagata shashi yatha. The full moon, tat purna shashi prabhananam is given. Shirasya, his head, looked like a full moon between the two Vishakhas. Vishakha yor madhyagata shashi yatha. Now, how do we understand this? That's where I was saying how the research process works. So when I came across this, I said, that doesn't make sense. Okay, because the evidence is so precise, so powerful that we know the first day where it needs to be, the position of the sun near Jeshta plus minus 2 nakshatra for 5561 BC. It is Jeshta Mula, just next to Mula. So it's like one nakshatra from there. So that's all good. Okay. Then there is a nakshatra description on the 12th day of the war, Kritika, that perfectly matches. Then this is 16. On 17th day, you're going to see full moon mentioned in the context of Punarvasu nakshatra. Like you can see Punarvasu right here. See the Punarvasu, Punarvasu, Punarvasu here. Okay. And suddenly on the 16th day, the full moon like moon in between Vishakha. So where does Vishakha come from? Now, this is a Mahabharata evidence, okay? And suddenly the Vishakha, and guess what? When I explain this, and so I explained it. I said, why would Vyasadeva describe this as a Vishakha? And now, because this particular screen is there, so it's hiding it. It's a snap, so I can't move it. It's not actual simulation, what I'm showing you right here. But Punarvasu Nakshatra is visualized. And again, if you don't understand this, you have to stop this. Go back to Nakshatra in Google, Indian text, Indian astronomy text, Panchanga, and become familiar. Punarvasu Nakshatra is described as made up of two stars, okay, like a castor, the castor here, okay, the two stars of Gemini, for example, okay, Pollux and Castor. So these are here number 1 and 2. But in the Indian, no, Punarvasu is Indian, but in the Indian text, what you will find is that Punarvasu sometimes is described as made out of 2 stars, other times made out of 4 stars. And what are those other 2 stars? They are here on the other side. Now, because it's hidden, I will not able to show you. One is a Gomesa, and there is another star. Okay, those are like a big dog and small dog, or you would have heard those terms. Okay, Shuna Siro of Rigveda. I mean, that's why I'm saying every simple reference from Mahabharata becomes like a hyperlink. You can talk about it for a day or for hours. Okay, so the Punarvasu, okay, one big dog. The Sirius is a big dog, and one of the star of Punarvasu Nakshatra is considered a small dog, like Canis Minor and Canis Major, even in Western astronomy. What does that tell you? The Indian names, okay, Shuna Siro, have gone from India into Western astronomy. Okay, they going Western astronomy would be recently, like maybe happened last 2000, 4000 years. But these are names from Rigveda. My point is, so I describe this, that Vishakha, as if, like, see, that's exactly the position that you see, the Purna Shashi Prabhananam, the full moon like moon between, like a face, between the 2 kundalas of this king Nila. Okay, I said, all right, this one kundala here is the 2 stars of Punarvasu on one side, and other 2 stars, additional 2 stars of Punarvasu on the other side here. Okay, they would be here. And if I get time, I will show you how those stars look like by starting the simulation. But, I would encourage you, maybe take that as a homework. Okay, go and look at the 4 stars of Punarvasu. So why Vishakha? Vishakha, Vishesha Shakha, this particular point is of a spatial branching is happening here. But in order to understand this, not only you have to, for example, the 4 stars or Canis Major, Canis Minor as Shuna Siro turning to Canis Major, Canis Minor, you have to read Rigveda, you have to read Western astronomy. For Punarvasu, 2 stars and 4 stars, you have to read Indian astronomy text, something else. If you want to understand the significance of this Vishakha, why suddenly Vishakha is coming here? And again, these Mahabharata researchers who have not understood the significance of it, guess what? They have started their another stupidity, saying, look, there is a full moon of Kritika happening here, then full moon of a Mrugashirsha happening here, and now suddenly full moon of a Vishakha. Now, they use this nonsense to make fun of me. What they don't realize is how much they are exposing their stupidity in the process. Okay, but let's take that all as a fun. Let's understand where this Vishakha comes from. By the way, this Vishakha word also comes in a similar context, in the context of a Punarvasu now. Surprise, surprise. But in Ramayana also, again, it's in an odd place, because Vishakha we know Vishakha after Chitra, Swati, and Vishakha before Anuradha. Okay, but why this Vishakha? One example in a simple way, I would say, see if it helps you. If it doesn't help, just forget it. For example, think of making a photocopy. How many of you remember that we used to, when the Xerox machines came, in fact, we call them Xerox, okay? So I just use that word. When the earlier versions of photocopy machines came, everywhere, in India, I remember, used to be said, hey, we do Xerox here. So the Xerox is actually a company name who made these photocopy machines, like they invented it, you can say, okay? And so we combine that special noun, the Xerox company, with the Xerox machine, literally making a photocopy. We called it like, hey, get a Xerox copy. We see this everywhere. Kleenex, like that's like a tissue paper, that's like a paper napkin or something like this. But we identify it with the company who possibly invented this concept, a Kleenex, right? And you can see this about many things, many things. For example, a TV station in our times was what? Doordarshan. Okay, because that was the only station that was available. So sometimes we connect with the proper noun for in a generic sense for a generic thing, but we identify together. Something like that has happened. This concept of a Vishakha, yes, there is a proper Vishakha nakshatra, okay, after Chitra Swati and before Anuradha Jeshta. But this concept of Vishakha is used by Vyasadeva and also Valmiki. And I'll talk about this Valmiki. It is going to take a long time. We have a long way to go in the Mahabharata evidence. But I will talk about that from a Valmiki Ramayana also. Again, just ditto. And it just surprised me. It gave me goosebumps. I said, my God, the same thing is happening again, exactly in the same place, in the region of Punarvasu and Apusha. But let's just limit ourselves to Mahabharata description. So why Vishakha? Okay, I just want you to notice something and then I'm going to take you there. Again, why we need tremendous background knowledge if you want to understand this. So Punarvasu, I understood this, or I interpreted this, that Vishakha as referring to a full moon between the two stars of Punarvasu on one side and two stars on the other side, as this pair of kundalas and full moon in between. Because that's how I could visualize it for the 31st October and everything else is matching. But there is, as I studied more, some additional inputs from likes of great original researchers like Rupa Bhattiji. Guys, I'll tell you, original researchers are extremely few. Okay, I mean, in the context of Indian astronomy and current living researchers, I can count them on fingers of my one hand. That's it. Okay. Now, of course, we can give a benefit of doubt and maybe use the other hand and the fingers of the other hand and may go to 20. We can do that. But really, it's I can count them on a finger of my one hand. What is this Vishakha? In order to understand, we have to go 30,000 years in the past, 30,000 years in antiquity. But before I take you there, quickly notice this is the line of the ecliptic, that is the path of the sun, reference grade as seen from the earth. But there is another line that I have drawn. This is the line of celestial equator. Okay. And what is celestial equator? If you don't know, stop this video, go to Google, do the study and come back. Where do they cross? They cross each other at the point of equinox. These are, of course, imaginary line. Nobody has drawn a line there in the sky, but in astronomy, they are very real. Okay, they're extremely real as the map drawn in a Google Maps that we follow, when we are driving. Okay, so they intersect each other at the point of equinox, and this is the point of spring equinox at the time of the Mahabharata war. So that's where that cross is. Okay, this cross, and that's how actually the name came Vishakha for the Vishakha nakshatra, and the name came Kritika for the Kritika nakshatra. Therefore, Kritika nakshatra in many ancient Indian astronomy texts is considered number one. So therefore, now we have to go to background knowledge to understand why something was called Vishakha, or reference to Vishakha came on the 16th day of the Mahabharata war. Why Kritika is considered the first nakshatra? I'm going to make it very short for you. This, again, the reference comes in the Mahabharata text. It comes in a Vana Parva. Okay, again, you're going to read more about that in Arundhati and Vashishta and fall of Abhijit, and so much astronomy there in the Vana Parva. But why Kritika is considered the first nakshatra? Again, you need to read Vana Parva for that. Of course, it's there in astronomy text, but my point is, it is also narrated in a metaphorical fashion, the story of a nakshatra in Vana Parva, 28,000 BC. That's how far back we have to go. Just a quick summary. Here it is, let's see, 28,000 here, 28,000 BC. If you go here, I'm looking at 28,000 BC, formation of current nakshatra system. Okay, that's when the nakshatra system began. You can also see this particular map that I showed you into the My India book 2022, published by MyInd. Okay, Pramod Buravalli's great efforts. grab a copy of it. But this is how the astronomy map would look like. I'm taking you back to 28,000 BCE. That's when our current nakshatra system was formed. Nakshatras existed before. There were calendars before in the Indian astronomy context, Indian civilizational context. But the current calendar that we see everywhere, with typically Kritika mentioned as the first nakshatra, is due to this particular event or epoch, you can say, happened 28,000 BC. I'm not going to the reasons, guys. That will take 5 hours, and still it will be equally dazed situation. But quickly, this is when spring equinox was at Kritika Nakshatra, and exactly opposite, another equinox, fall equinox, was at Vishakha. And that's how these names appeared for the Kritika and Vishakha. That's why I'm saying the Kritika might have had a different name and Vishakha might have had a different name, but it appears that they attain their current names 30,000 years ago. So Kritika is like the Marathi Katri, okay? And cut. The cut in English also comes from that chur or kr, So that's Kritika. And so since the Kritika name was given here, what is it? Look at the shape there. The celestial equator cutting into the ecliptic and then going away from each other. Looks like that lever mechanism, right? Cutting mechanism. And the opposite of us shows the same one at the fall equinox, that is Vishakha. They attend those names. Okay, the Vishakha was considered a proxy of a Kritika with a skanda, which is the axis of the earth, and so on. Guys, go read Vanaparva. Okay, the story is beautifully narrated in a metaphorical fashion. The point is, that's where these names, just like the Xerox machine or a Kleenex. Okay, now there are many tissue papers which are not Kleenex, but we will still call, hey, give me a Kleenex, give me a Kleenex paper or Kleenex tissue paper, or can you make a Xerox of it? The proper name or the original name has still retained, although it's a photocopy. Same thing has happened with Kritika, same thing has happened with Vishakha. So many times the word Kritika or Vishakha could be used, not always, could be used in the sense of that intersection of celestial equator and the ecliptic. That's exactly what it has happened. At least we can validate that. So that is the other evidence. I hope you understood it. If not, we ought to revisit this, read my books, read my Bhishma Nirvana, but also when did the Mahabharata war happen, my blogs, my many other videos, YouTube videos, to bring home this particular point. But let me go to the quickly last one, and I want to stop, which is severe dust causing interruptions. Now, I have asserted meaning it is backed by evidence, because evidence is there in the Mahabharata text. Although the fighting continued through the 14th night of the Mahabharata war, finally Arjun requests to stop it for some time. And one of the reasons he gives, of course, the folks have tired, the members of both sides have tired. But other reason he gives is because there was a darkness because of the dust. And this has also become another useless issue for discussions for many Mahabharata researchers. Okay, the descriptions are very clear. And when we get to the 14th night warfare, just as a separate episode, not just in a Shraddha Prajna, we'll find a way to do it. You'll see how fascinating the evidence is. But when I have asserted that the war stopped because it was a full moon day, which is what these Mahabharata researchers who do not consider or do not understand that the war began on the Amavasya want to object to, because they are falling into pieces on every front. So they say, well, come on, how can the dust can be the reason to stop the war or create darkness? Therefore, I'm just bringing this evidence. Severe dust causing interruptions on the 16th day evening, it did not cause it, but there is a possibility of it. And the warriors of both sides felt fearful that the dust will cause darkness and we will not able to fight through the night. So therefore they stopped. Okay, that's what they say. But why do they say this? That's what this description, you note down the references, the dust and the setting of the sun created darkness. That's the Mahabharata description. It could have simply said setting of the sun created darkness. It did not say that. It said the dust, because you know what? When the sun was set, still it was a day very close to the full moon day, and therefore there could be sufficient light, not necessarily to recognize everyone and fight, but enough to walk around and so on. But the dust and the setting of the sun created darkness. Warriors were terrified of fighting during the night, so they returned to their camps. Why say that? I mean, they fought on the 14th day, 14th night. Why suddenly a problem? Here is the reason. Because on the 14th night, they continued, okay, because it was a full moon day. That's the reason they continued. Of course, they're using what you call mashal and torch lights, and lighted torches and so on. Of course that's required. Those people who have walked on a full moon day, they know that the light is there enough to walk, but it's not like you don't see as clearly as during the daytime. Anyways, so the dust caused the darkness at that full moon night. Arjuna requested to stop the war, 14th night, and then after some time the dust came down, and therefore the full moon is already there. They could continue the fight. Guess what? I want to take you back for a second. Forget the darkness being caused by dust during the night. That's easy to understand. On the 15th day, there is a Mahabharata description of darkness caused by the dust during the daytime. Okay, and sometime we will refer to that. This experience is there with the warriors, the experience of the 14th night, experience of the 15th day. And that's why they are seeing this possibility of darkness again created on the 16th night. Therefore, warriors were terrified of fighting during the night, and so they returned to their camps. Okay, so that's the 4 different types of evidence that one can see on the 16th day of the war. And that's it. Okay, so all right, I'll see you soon in another episode of Shraddha and Pradnya. Namaskar.